One blood type kept appearing differently in multiple studies, and researchers wanted to understand why. This isn't my idea. It's data from Harvard Medical School. The study lasted 20 years, involving more than 40,000 people, and the results were so inconvenient that they're still kept private. Today I'll tell you what cardiologists and geneticists know but rarely discuss. Is there a link between blood type and lifespan? Why do some blood types statistically live longer? What specifically should you do, depending on your blood type, and what most people do completely wrong? Watch to the end. In the middle of the video, there will be information that directly relates to your blood type, and that will completely change your approach to health. If you leave early, skip the part that applies to you. Let me start with the main question. Is there even a connection between individual blood types and longevity? Or is this just like those horoscopes and blood type diets from the 1990s? Here are the facts. In 2012, Harvard Medical School published a study that followed 40,000 people for 20 years. The conclusion was clear. People with blood type O have a significantly lower risk of cardiovascular disease compared to those with blood types A, B, and B. The difference in risk of myocardial infarction is up to 23%. But here's the interesting thing. This study doesn't suggest that people with blood type O are simply lucky. It talks about risks, and risks aren't a death sentence. They're information you can work with. In 2020, a study was published in the journal Blood Advances that linked blood type to the severity of COVID-19. Those with blood type A demonstrated a higher risk of severe complications. Those with blood type A demonstrated a lower risk. Again, this isn't a death sentence, but it is data that doctors are obligated to consider. Why isn't this talked about enough? Medicine doesn't like generalizations. Doctors are afraid that a patient will say, "You have blood type B, you'll die earlier," and panic, so they keep this information quiet. But I believe otherwise. Information is power over your balance, and you have the right to know it. Blood type O is the most ancient. Genetically, it dates back to hunter-gatherers, whose bodies were designed for physical activity, a meat-based diet, and high levels of stress as a norm. What does this mean today? People with blood type O tend to have higher levels of stomach acid. On the one hand, this is good. They better absorb animal protein and iron. On the other hand, they have a higher risk of stomach and duodenal ulcers. The Helicobacter pylori bacterium finds ideal conditions for reproduction in the acidic environment of blood type O. In terms of cardiovascular risks, blood type O is at an advantage. It has a lower risk of thrombosis because the blood has a lower concentration of von Willebrand factor, a protein responsible for clotting. Fewer clots means fewer heart attacks and strokes. But there's a nuance that almost no one talks about. People with blood type O are statistically more prone to an aggressive response to stress. They secrete cortisol more actively, and it stays in the blood longer. In the long term, chronic stress is more dangerous for people with type 1 than for any other group. This is because their nervous system reacts more sharply and takes longer to return to normal. What this means in practice? If you have type 1, stress management is not an option or a luxury. It's literally a matter of life expectancy. Blood type A appeared later than blood type A, around the time humans transitioned to agriculture. The body adapted to plant foods, grains, and dairy products. This adaptation carries both benefits and very specific risks. The advantage of the second group is their immune system. It is more active and aggressive towards external threats. People in the second group, on average, cope better with infectious diseases. Historically, this has given them a huge advantage in surviving epidemics. But here's the flip side of this coin. An overactive immune system is a direct path to autoimmune diseases. Rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune thyroiditis, and systemic lupus erythematosus are all more common in people with blood type A. The immune system begins to attack its own tissues. The second risk is cancer. Studies show that blood type A is associated with a higher risk of stomach and pancreatic cancer. The mechanism isn't fully understood, but the link has been statistically confirmed. What should you do with this information if you have blood type A? Don't panic. Get checked. Gastroscopy every 2 years after 40. Pancreatic ultrasound and inflammatory markers in the blood. Early diagnosis changes the outcome dramatically. Subscribe to the channel. The next video will discuss which tests you need to take after 40, depending on your blood type. This is a specific list that I give to my patients. To stay up to date, subscribe and ring the bell right now. Blood type A is one of the youngest in evolutionary terms. It emerged among peoples who led a nomadic lifestyle, herding livestock, subsisting on meat and dairy products, and constantly on the move. People with blood type A are well adapted to a varied diet and physical endurance. Cardiovascular risks in people with blood type A are intermediate, higher than those with blood type A, but lower than those with blood type B. However, there is a specific risk that is rarely discussed. Blood type A is associated with a higher likelihood of developing neurodegenerative diseases, such as Parkinson's disease and some forms of dementia. Research has not yet provided a definitive answer to the question of why, but a correlation has been observed in several independent studies. Blood type B is the rarest, emerging about 1,000 years ago as a result of the mixing of blood types B and B. People with blood type B inherit some of the risks of both, an increased cancer risk from blood type B and a certain predisposition to neurodegeneration from blood type B. But here's a paradox I find truly intriguing. Among centenarians, people over 95, there's a disproportionately high number of carriers of type 4. Scientists still can't explain this phenomenon definitively. One hypothesis is that type 4 has the most diverse antigen profile, which gives the immune system greater flexibility in fighting various threats. This reminds us that statistics are probabilities, not fate, and that biology is more complex than any risk table. I'll say something that may contradict everything I've said before. Blood type isn't the primary factor in longevity. Not even close. Here's what science says about centenarians. Dan Bettner's Blue Zones study examined regions with the highest concentrations of people over 100. Sardinia, Okinawa, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, Icaria in Greece, Loma Linda in California. These people's blood types were wildly diverse. No correlation. What did they have in common? 4 things. Regular moderate physical activity. Not the gym, but movement as a part of life. A plant-based diet with some animal protein. Strong social ties, family, community, a sense of belonging, and, most surprisingly, a clear sense of purpose. The Japanese call this ikigai, a reason to wake up in the morning. No centenarian has lived to be 100 thanks to their blood type, but some of them survived despite the genetic risks, because their lifestyle compensated for their biological predisposition. This is where blood type becomes useful information, not as a death sentence, but as a risk map. If you have type A, you know you need to pay special attention to your stomach and immune markers. If you have type 1, stress management is more important to you than for others. If you have type B, neuroprevention, physical activity, cognitive stimulation, omega-3. This isn't a horoscope. This is personalized medicine in its simplest form. I want to give you 3 specific tips that work for any blood type. Not some abstract, eat healthy and exercise kind of advice, but specific things with a mechanism of action. First, control inflammation. Chronic low-grade inflammation is the #1 mechanism of aging. It damages blood vessels, joints, and the nervous system. The simplest marker is C-reactive protein in the blood. Get it tested once a year. The norm is below 1 milligram per liter. Any higher is a signal that something in the body is chronically inflamed, and you need to find the cause. What reduces inflammation? Omega-3 fatty acids, at least 1 gram of EPA and DHA per day from fish oil or fatty fish. Curcumin, the active ingredient in turmeric, is one of the most studied natural anti-inflammatory agents. And get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, because it's during sleep that the body performs its anti-inflammatory cleaning. Second, protect your mitochondria. Mitochondria are the powerhouses of your cells. With age, they degrade, become fewer in number, and function less effectively. This is what causes fatigue, cognitive decline, and muscle loss after age 40. What helps mitochondria? Intermittent fasting, an 8 to 10 hour feeding window, gives cells time for autophagy, the self-cleansing process. Moderate physical activity includes walking, swimming, and cycling. And nicotinamide riboside, a form of vitamin B3 that is directly involved in mitochondrial energy production. It's one of the few supplements with a real evidence base in gerontology. Third, monitor your insulin, not your cholesterol. Most people are afraid of cholesterol, but the main marker of metabolic aging is insulin resistance. When cells stop responding normally to insulin, a cascade is triggered. Fat is deposited in the wrong places. Blood vessels become inflamed, and the brain receives less glucose. A simple test. Take a fasting glucose and insulin test simultaneously. Divide the insulin by the glucose. This is the HOMA-IR index. The normal range is below 2. If it's above 2, you have early insulin resistance, which can be reversed at this stage by changing your diet and activity. Your blood type isn't a death sentence or a passport to longevity. It's one variable in a very complex equation, a variable that can't be changed. But knowing it allows you to fine-tune everything else. Blood type 1. Manage stress like a medicine. Blood type 2. Don't skip a gastroscopy and monitor your immune markers. Blood type 3. Invest in your brain health from a young age. Blood type 4. You have the most diverse immune profile and you're disproportionately common among centenarians. Use this wisely, and remember, not a single person in the blue zones lived to be 100 because they knew their blood type. They lived because they moved, ate real food, were needed by those around them, and knew why they woke up in the morning. Subscribe to the channel. The next video will cover specific tests you should take after 40. Not a generic list from the internet, but the markers that actually predict risk. I'll break down each one with numbers and standards. Click the bell